Hello, this is the arguments video for Comp 2. In this video, I'm going to give a course overview of all the units we'll be going over this semester. I'll also look at the understanding arguments and academic arguments reading. I'll also look at the reading journal that is due and talk a little bit more about the syllabus in terms of looking ahead to week 2 and the syllabus quiz. In general, my videos may not show the course that you are actually enrolled in, but it will show the same pieces that you will need to do in your own course. Let's start with the semester overview. Our first unit, which I think I mentioned in week 1, is rhetorical analysis. And in this essay, we're going to be trying to convince and inform our readers. We're going to be looking at someone else's argument, analyzing how it works, how the rhetoric is broken down. We'll also be talking about how to use a source in our papers and how to format our papers as well as our research from those sources. I mentioned this also in class during week 1 that this paper will require a tutorial. It's a required tutorial, and that means everyone will meet with me individually to discuss their papers before the final draft is due. Unit 2, we're going to write a paper called Mapping a Controversy. And this is an argument to make decisions. In this paper, we're not actually going to take a stand in the controversy. Rather, we're going to map out all the positions on a specific controversy and sort of summarize them without taking one of those sides. We're going to continue working with sources, but this time we're going to bring in how to find sources and evaluate them rather than using sources we've been given. Generally, during a normal semester, I have students get in small groups and do a scavenger hunt together and present on a database together. Because of COVID, I haven't quite decided what to do for those 2 group projects, whether it be a modified version or something different, but I will decide before Unit 2 and let you guys know when that gets closer. In Unit 2, we're going to start doing peer reviews. So we'll get our peers' feedback on our papers, and I will be holding conditional tutorials. I will discuss those conditions when we get to Unit 2. In Unit 3, we finally get to take a side in a controversy. So in this one, we're going to continue the same topic we wrote about in Unit 2 in terms of mapping the controversy, but in this one, we'll get to choose one of those sides and advocate or persuade. So we're making our own arguments. We're going to continue working with sources and learning about that. And there's one more group project that I usually assign called the Team Anthology. And so again, I will let you guys know when we get to Unit 3 whether or not we'll do that or if we'll be doing something modified. I will also offer conditional tutorials for Unit 3. Our final essay is going to be a proposal essay. So we're continuing to persuade, and we're going to continue to work on finding and evaluating sources. The research element is heavy on this paper. It's our last paper, and we're going to be doing an annotated bibliography with this essay. And of course, we'll talk more about that in Unit 4. Because this is our biggest and our last essay, we're going to have peer reviews and a required tutorial. So you'll get 2 layers of feedback on your final drafts, or before you turn in your final draft. Unit 5 is multimodal argument. So I call that the remediation. We're changing the media of our last paper. And of course, we'll talk more about what that means in Unit 5. We're going to continue to trying to persuade. We're going to continue using our sources. And for this one, I'm going to offer optional tutorials, so students who want help, but it's not required. We'll also be working on our final portfolio at the end of the semester, and our final exam is going to actually be presenting our multimodal arguments in small groups. So that's an overview of our 5 units that we'll be covering in Comp 2. I hope that helps you in terms of sort of having an idea of the map that we're following this semester. Next, I'd like to talk about arguments. You guys should have already done the reading before watching this video, so if you haven't, please pause it and go ahead and finish the 2 sections I've asked you to read. I'm not going to go over those readings in very great detail, but wanted to highlight a few things that are very important. So what is argument? According to our textbook, an argument could be any text, written, spoken, or oral or visual, that expresses a point of view. And of course, that ties in with our book's title, Everything is an Argument, right? Even a t-shirt can be an argument. So this book is asking us to sort of go about and, our everyday lives, and hopefully, where we see those arguments in our everyday lives will help us be more conscious of them, but also able to translate that into our writing. Another thing that I think is just so wonderful, as the book states, anyone, anywhere, with access to a phone, a tablet, or other electronic device can launch arguments that circle the globe in seconds. And that's what I think is wonderful, is this idea that now with modern technology, our arguments can hold so much more power and go so much further than, say, just a piece of paper that we wrote and turned in to our comp teacher. And I think that's exciting. So our book asks us to think about everyday arguments. So like I said, our t-shirts can make arguments. So I'd like you to think about the clothes you wear, the foods you eat, the groups you join, and just sort of take a few minutes to think about what arguments do they make. For example, I have a Royals t-shirt, and when I wear that t-shirt, that tells other people that I think the Royals are great. They may not have been doing so great these last few years, but I'm still a fan, and that's the argument that that t-shirt makes. So I'd like you to ponder and think about one argument that you make, whether it's through your clothes, your foods, or the groups you join. Next, I'd like you to point you to page 6 of Everything's an Argument, and that's one of the pieces of the reading journal that's due. I'd also like to look at the Respond on page 30, another part of the reading journal. So here I have before me the reading journal, which you can find in the after class materials folder for week 1. I'm currently recording the arguments video, and that will be available once I'm done. So for the reading journal, there's 3 pieces, and the first 2 are what I mentioned before, pages 6 and 30. So on page 6, we have a prompt that asks us to think about the arguments expressed by 6 different items. So what I would like you to do for this prompt is to look at each one. The first one's a Golden State Warriors cap, and tell me at least one argument that Golden State Warriors cap makes, at least one. Okay, then do the same for Nike Air Zoom Pegasus 34. What is one argument that makes? The explicit lyrics, what is at least one argument that label makes, and so on through all 6 of those, including the health warnings on a pack of cigarettes, a Tesla Model 3 electric car, and a pair of Ray-Ban sunglasses. So for number 1, list at least one argument that each of those items makes in your opinion. Now for page 30, that prompt asks you to look at this warning politically incorrect sign. And I would like you to answer the questions about it, except for the 3rd question, which is, which of the stasis questions does it most appropriately respond to? You don't need to answer that question because I had you skip that part of the chapter. So the chapter the first chapter parts that I had you read will help you answer these first 2 questions. So be sure to thoroughly read through them in order to answer those questions appropriately. So the first section I had you read had to do with arguments in general. The second section I asked you to read has to do with academic arguments, which of course is our main purpose in Comp 2. So what are some features of academic arguments? I kind of pulled this together from the unit or from the chapter, but what we see in academic arguments is that they use research and evidence. They're generally written for an audience that knows something about the topic. They're not completely ignorant, and we don't need to explain every single thing to them. There's always a clear and compelling point or thesis statement. It is fairly formal and clear, right? Not very informal in terms of like using slang. Obviously written grammatically. Of course, we would always write grammatically no matter what kind of argument we write. We use documentation for our sources and evidence. So this is what we want to see in our papers for Comp 2. All right, these, despite everything being an argument, as the first chapter points out, we are not making t-shirts for Comp 2. We are writing essays, and those are academic arguments. So these are features that we want to see when we look at academic arguments. So of course, read through that whole the whole section I've assigned for that chapter before you do part 3 of your reading journal. I do want to point out the rest of that chapter that I didn't assign is about the writing process. So just maybe keep that in mind or bookmarked. If you are struggling at some point during when you're writing a research paper, the rest of that chapter can give you tips on each step. But in terms of that first section, which I did assign, that is telling you, again, what an academic argument should look like. And for part 3 of your reading journal, I've asked you to look at some passages on pages 418, so that should say 420, I'll fix that. And each one, I'm asking you to rate how academic it is. So first rank them, right? Which one is the most academic down to the least academic. And then for the other 2 parts, I want you to tell me, why is the least academic one not very academic? What about it tells you that it's not academic? And then conversely, for the one that you ranked most academic, why did you do that? What tells you that it's academic? Okay. I believe that makes sense, and it will especially make sense if you've done the readings that explain what arguments are and what academic arguments are. So once you've done the readings, watch this video and completed the reading journal 1, you'll be done for week 1. I did want to take some time in this video to look ahead to week 2. In terms of the syllabus quiz, just a reminder that the syllabus does live here in the syllabus and course documents tab. I did put a link, or I will put a link to the syllabus here in the before class materials folder, but just a reminder, it'll just take you here to the syllabus and course documents folder. I wanted to mention a few things on the syllabus because I didn't have time during week 1. I did want to point out that my email address is kgladfelter@ucmo.edu. Make sure you get that K in there. Believe it or not, there is another Gladfelter on campus, and they do not want your emails. I will be holding office hours via Zoom every Monday and Wednesday from 3:30 to 5, and every Friday from 9 to 11. If you want to meet with me and can't, or for whatever reason want to meet outside of those hours, just shoot me an email and we can set up an appointment that works for both of us. The next thing listed here is our student learning outcomes. These are skills that you should be able to complete once you're done with Comp 2. You may notice that they're very similar to the course outcomes for Comp 1, but we have added conducting research, evaluating scholarly materials, and examining the rhetorical strategies employed by a variety of authors. So a lot of the skills that we're working on in Comp 2, of course, are building on skills from Comp 1. I talked briefly about our course texts in class during week 1. I've listed those there. I talked about our COVID policy during week 1. I would like to point out in the expectations, I've highlighted there, if you work hard on your essays and spend time revising them, that choice will be reflected in your grades. In other words, be willing to put in the time for the grade you would like to receive. So if you want an A, you're going to have to work on it all semester. You can't decide in April that you want one, so just keep that in mind. My course requirements are very similar to what they were before COVID. But in terms of participation, some of that's going to be online now, of course, instead of just face-to-face. I do expect participation. Remember to always communicate, as early as possible if there's any issues. We'll be doing reading and writing, of course. We're going to create a Google site at the end of the semester. We'll be doing peer reviews, tutorials, and other smaller assignments as to be expected. The rest of my syllabus includes some generic or general policies, as well as information about various offices on campus that you can get help from for various issues. The final part of the syllabus list, competencies. So this is how this course meets a gen ed competency. As you know, Comp 2 is a gen ed. Education major competencies and the department goals for this course. So that's it for my arguments video. I'll see you guys next week, in which we'll talk about rhetorical analysis in your first paper. I'll see you then.